This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The Palestinian Nahr al-Barid refugee camp in Lebanon continues to be at the center stage after today's shelling of Fateh al-Islam positions by the Lebanese army. By the order of the Lebanese Authority, the clashes have stopped in order to allow emergency vehicles to transport the wounded to the hospitals and provide medicines and food supplies to the residents. This is the first incident in nearly 20 years where the Lebanese army engaged in direct confrontations with Palestinian groups in refugee camps. Dozens of Palestinian civilians were killed and wounded in today's violence. Ali Ibrahim reports.
من هذا الاحتلال يقصف الجيش اللبناني منذ فجر اليوم مواقع لما يسمى بفتح الإسلام داخل مخيم نهر البارد.
From these adjacent hills, the Lebanese army began a pre-dawn shelling of the Fateh al-Islam's position in Nahr al-Barid refugee camp north of Tripoli. The clashes, which erupted for the second consecutive day, may bring the Palestinian-Lebanese relationship to a critical stage. This is the first time in 2 decades that the Lebanese army has engaged in direct confrontations with Palestinian groups in refugee camps. Today's clashes between the Lebanese army and the Fateh al-Islam group started in Tripoli and quickly spread to Nahr al-Barid, where dozens of civilians were killed and wounded.
No one likes a war. As you see, the situation is tragic. The real victims are the children and the civilians, who have nothing to do with the issues in question.
Fateh al-Islam is a terrorist group. They came here to destroy the camp. The children are the ones paying the price. They carried out an attack on the army checkpoint. They chanted, "God is great," while opening fire on the soldiers. That was wrong. They were not fighting against the Jews.
الحكومة اللبنانية أعطت الجيش الضوء الأخضر لاتخاذ أي تدابير جذرية.
Without providing its army with a political blanket to enter into the camp, the Lebanese government authorized its troops to use all necessary measures to crush the Fateh al-Islam group. While expressing support to the Lebanese army, Palestinian factions were concerned over the deteriorating human situation in the camp, where local hospitals are not equipped to deal with serious injuries. To make matters worse, emergency vehicles were unable to enter the camp. Without a doubt, what happened today in the camp will have a serious impact upon the relationship between the Palestinians and the Lebanese. Until the time comes to examine this issue, the door remains wide open for all possibilities.
تلفزيون دبي من محيط مخيم نهر البارد شمال لبنان.
The Fateh al-Islam has threatened to burn Lebanon if the Lebanese army provoke its militants. In a communique sent to Reuters by fax, the group vowed to, quote, "open the gates of hell and the fire of volcanoes will sweep over Lebanon and its army." With this, the battle between the Lebanese army and Fateh al-Islam militants continued for the second day around the Nahr al-Barid refugee camp in northern Lebanon. Even though the army is not allowed to enter the camp, it bombed it from outside. Camp medics said 9 Palestinian civilians were killed and more than 70 wounded today as Lebanese troops shelled Islamic militants. The latest deaths bring to 55 the number of people killed in the 2-day fierce fighting. And Nahr al-Barid residents say the sanitary situation in the camp is deteriorating due to the fighting. The Fateh al-Islam is not allowing the Red Cross to enter the camp. In Tripoli, shops have reopened their doors while the army has set up various checkpoints, creating traffic. Less than 24 hours after the clashes erupted in the north yesterday, 1 woman was killed when a bomb exploded adjacent to the ABC shopping center in Ashrafieh, raising fear that the violence will spiral out of control. Sarah Khouri has the details.
A huge explosion rocked the Ashrafieh region of the capital minutes before midnight. The car with a bomb blew up outside the ABC shopping center as moviegoers were leaving the theater. An elderly woman was killed in her home as a wall collapsed on her from the impact of the blast. The victim was identified as 63-year-old Leila Mukbil. Some 11 people were wounded. They were taken to the surrounding hospitals, Hotel Dieu, Jaitewe and Rizq. They all returned home this morning. During the night, the Lebanese Red Cross and the Civil Defense evacuated traumatized elders from the surrounding buildings. Police said the bomb weighed about 15 kilograms. The blast, which exploded in front of the Mar Mitr church, started fires in parked vehicles and shattered cars, shops and apartment windows. Other vehicles were collapsed from the impact of the explosion. The police has qualified the explosion as an act of terrorism and said the explosive device was believed to have been placed underneath a car in a parking lot adjacent to ABC. The bomb caused a crater 1.5 meters deep and 3 meters wide in the road. Police and army troops cordoned off the area as ambulances and civil defense volunteers rushed to the scene. Sunday's explosion is the fourth in Ashrafieh in the last 2 years. It comes as the UN Security Council is studying a draft resolution to impose the international tribunal in the assassination of former Prime Minister Rafi al-Hariri. Prior to the explosion and due to the tense situation on Sunday, the Lebanese army reinforced its presence on the streets of the capital and its suburbs. Security measures are ongoing throughout the day.
The attack against the Lebanese army in Tripoli triggered a wave of indignation from various leaders of the political spectrum. Defense Minister Ilyas Al-Nour vowed that the terrorists who killed the Lebanese soldiers will pay a very harsh price. And speaking from Kirki, Interim Foreign Minister Tariq Mitri expressed the Maronite Patriarch's deepest worry over the current situation in the country. Here is what other politicians have also said.
Prime Minister Fouad al-Sanyura said the blows dealt by the Fateh al-Islam against the Lebanese army are a premeditated crime and a dangerous attempt to destabilize Lebanon. The head of the Democratic Gathering, MP Walid Jumblat, for his part, warned that the clashes in the north are only the beginning of a series of dangerous security operations in the country. He called on the political forces in the country to put their differences aside and stand by the security forces and the army to restore peace in the country. The March 14 follow-up committee said the army and ISF victims and civilians who fell in the clashes with the Fateh al-Islam are the martyrs of the nation and its independence. The committee vowed the March 14 stands by the legitimate government. The head of the Future Bloc, MP Saad al-Hariri, denounced the attacks and issued an appeal for calm, calling for the population of Tripoli to cooperate with the Lebanese army. He warned the criminals and their backers that using Islam as a cover for their operations will not help them, because everyone knows their terrorist and criminal acts have no relation whatsoever to Islam. And Sports and Youth Minister Ahmed Fatfat said the attacks aimed at sending a warning against steps by the UN Security Council to set up an international tribunal to try suspects in the killing of former Premier Rafi al-Hariri. Fatfat held Damascus responsible for the flare-up. Moving on to remarks made by the opposition, Hezbollah condemned all attacks against the Lebanese army and the internal security forces that threaten security, stability and civil peace in Lebanon. In a statement, the party stressed on the role of the Lebanese army in protecting peace. It said it is important not to target civilians, whether Lebanese or Palestinians. Hezbollah stressed the situation must be contained and a political solution reached to end the crisis, holding the ruling majority responsible for security breaches in the country. House Speaker Nabih Berri contacted former Premiers Omar Karami and Najib Mikati and Army Commander Michel Suleiman, extending condolences for the victims of the army. Berri denounced the attacks and stressed on the need to restore peace to the area. And MP Michel Aoun described the attacks against the army in Tripoli as a stab in the back by those whom the army hosted, provided with home and shelter. Aoun used the opportunity to renew attacks against the government. He said the tragedy could happen again because in Lebanon the government does not learn from past mistakes. Aoun held the ruling majority responsible for what happened because, in his words, the government has been lenient with terrorist organizations and is only concerned with countering the opposition. And President Emil Lahoud called on the legal authorities to investigate with the people arrested in order to determine the side behind them and the objective of their acts. Lahoud also called on the Lebanese to cooperate with the judicial authorities and internal security forces so that calm can be restored.
Little is known about the Fateh al-Islam group. While the major Palestinian groups agree that it is not a Palestinian group, Lebanese fronts believe that it is close to Al-Qaeda organization and is linked with the Syrian intelligence. Both Damascus and the Fateh al-Islam group deny this. However, everybody agrees that the group is new and that its members, who come from many Arab countries, are few.
A new event took place in this crowded camp filled with Palestinian refugees near Tripoli, one of the larger cities in northern Lebanon. It seems that this summer is going to be a hot one because it started out with the bloody events in this camp, which ironically is called Nahr al-Bared, or the Cold River Camp. According to Palestinian organizations, nearly 35,000 Palestinians here have been transformed into hostages due to the adventures of a group that calls itself Fateh al-Islam. This group, which is almost unknown, was established nearly a year ago. According to accounts by residents and the Lebanese authorities, a man named Shakir al-Absi leads the group. According to the same accounts, al-Absi is a former member of the Fatah al-Intifada organization, a splinter of the Fatah movement, which is currently headed by the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Absi was sentenced to death in absentia in Jordan for the assassination of an American diplomat in Amman in 2002. Other analysts link him to Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. According to accounts by residents and Lebanese authorities, nearly a year ago, Absi and a few members of his organization, centralized in the Nahr al-Bared camp, invited dozens of Arab fighters to the alleyways of the camp. These fighters number nearly 200, and according to Lebanese media reports, most of them are Syrians, Saudis, Yemenis, and Lebanese. At the hands of these fighters, this camp, which is a place of misery waiting for a political and humanitarian solution, has been transformed into a military training camp. The identity of these fighters continues to be a source of speculation, especially since the major Palestinian groups agreed that Fateh al-Islam is absolutely not a Palestinian organization. Some have linked the group to Al-Qaeda, pointing to its Islamic speeches that transcend nations and the nationalities of its members, most of whom came to Lebanon from Iraq. There is also ambiguity about this group's relationship with Syria. Damascus claims that it has no links to this group. It went further by arresting Abu Khalid al-Amla, who is said to have links with the establishment of this organization. However, this did not prevent Syria from bearing its share of accusations against it. Last March, the Lebanese Minister of Interior, Hassan Assaba, accused the organization of carrying out the Ain al-Aq explosions and said that it has a relationship with the Syrian intelligence.
It is a part of the Syrian Secret Intelligence Agency.
Both the organization and Damascus rushed to deny this. Some Lebanese factions describe these events as a battle over the special international tribunal for the assassination of Hariri, and even went on further, linking the latest events to Syria, accusing it of creating confusion to distract attention away from the international tribunal. Others, however, believe that this is not a precise analysis, especially since the dire situation of the Palestinians in Lebanon may lead some of them to extremism, in search of a way out of a living hell with no end in sight. Mr. Fateh, General Un asked, why did you allow Fateh al-Islam to operate from Nahr al-Bared refugee camp? The group was launched from your neighborhood and from your homes and was allowed to operate on Lebanese soil. Why did you allow it?
الأجهزة الأمنية اعتقلت من قام بتفجير جريمة عين علق.
Lebanese law enforcement agencies have arrested the perpetrators in the Ain Alaq bomb attack. However, the other bomb attacks mentioned by General Aoun are still under investigation.
نقاش على المستوى الفلسطيني فيما يحدث اليوم. أن لا يتم الحديث عن الأوضاع.
Today, we want to focus our discussion on resolving this issue at the Palestinian level. We don't want to mix between what happened in the Palestinian camp and Lebanese national or security issues. A crime was committed yesterday in the camp, and this resulted in the clashes we witnessed today. However, General Aoun started to make generalization and accusation, linking today's incident to previous killings and bomb attacks. Let me be honest with you. Aoun talked about the Lebanese intelligence internal situation, and I do not want to comment on his statement or discuss this Lebanese issue.
العماد عون يعني هو يتحدث في الشأن الداخلي اللبناني لا أسمح لنفسي بالحديث عن هذه القضية. لكن
Let's discuss the Palestinian topic separate from Lebanese internal issues. Owen put it simply. He said that Fateh al-Islam launched its campaign from your area and from your homes. Why did you allow them to do that? You can't remain silent.
لا يمكنني أن أقوم الجيش اللبناني بما يمتلك من عتاد ومن قوة لوجستية.
We realize that the Lebanese army, which is equipped and has a logistic power, is faced with the challenges while dealing with this group. The Palestinian refugee camps, including Nahr al-Bared, do not have a security authority or institution that is able to contain the problem. We all know that Palestinian camps face challenges, especially in the absence of a security institution. We don't have a united front that can deal with this issue. What we have in the camp is several political groups, including the Alliance of Palestinian Blocs and PLO factions. We can't resolve this issue overnight. Having said that, Fateh al-Islam has become an issue on the agenda of Palestinian political groups in the camp. However, we can't ask Palestinians to do more than what they can. We acknowledge that there is a problem, and the presence of Fateh al-Islam in the camp hurts the image of Palestinians and their plight. Yes, there is a problem in the camp, but once again, we can't resolve this issue overnight.
هدد رئيس الوزراء الإسرائيلي إيهود أولمرت اليوم أن إسرائيل ستصاعد عدوانها العسكري على غزة.
Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert warned that Israel will escalate its military aggression if missiles continue to be launched from Gaza. The ceasefire that was mediated between Hamas and Fateh ended more than a week of fierce internal fighting between the two factions, but 3 Hamas activists were martyred today by Israeli air raids which continue to strike different areas in Gaza. This comes as Israeli sources claim that it is unlikely that Israel will launch a wide-scale operation in Gaza.
غير المرجح شن عملية برية إسرائيلية كبيرة في غزة.
بدأت الحياة تعود تدريجيا على استحياء إلى مدينة غزة.
Life started returning to normal in Gaza, which was transformed into a ghost town in the past few days due to the internal fighting between Fateh and Hamas that claimed more than 50 Palestinians and injured 200 others. Palestinians are returning gradually to their businesses, some of which were destroyed by the internal fighting. They are going out to the streets after they were forced to stay in their homes during the internal fighting because they were afraid for their lives.
If the internal fighting should happen again, God forbids, we beg of them not to hit the buildings, residential towers, homes, and citizens. They should not inflict a catastrophe on everyone by their internal fighting.
As I told you, I was exiled from Bethlehem. Our 3 homes were destroyed by Israel in Bethlehem, and I have been exiled to Gaza. But now my home in Gaza was actually destroyed by the same people who consider themselves fighters. They say that they are freedom fighters and that they are opening fire against Israel, but they are shooting at us.
Calm has started to return to Gaza following the ceasefire that was mediated by Egypt between Fateh and Hamas. The ceasefire agreement was also done in coordination with the Islamic Jihad and all other Palestinian factions who expressed hope that the positive atmosphere would prevail in Gaza and that differences between Fateh and Hamas would end for good. The biggest loser of this internal fighting is the Palestinian people. The occupation, which continues its aggression against Gaza, is the only winner.
With God's help and the support of the Islamic Jihad and the Egyptian security delegation, and with the receptiveness of Fateh and Hamas, the internal fighting is stopped and life in Gaza returned to normal. This will allow us to focus on the imminent Israeli incursion against the occupied Palestinian lands.
The images of destruction that were caused by the state of chaos in Gaza are similar to the images that were caused by the consecutive Israeli air raids. Israel resumed its savage aggression against the Palestinians. Its warplanes launched consecutive air raids against different areas in Gaza and assassinated a number of resistance fighters by hitting their car. The Israeli warplanes also hit other targets, including blacksmith workshops, murdering and injuring a number of people.
هذه الورشة فيها 33 عامل بيشتغلوا
33 workers were making a living in this blacksmith workshop. Now I have no job for them. I borrowed half the money to build this workshop from Gaza and Israel. I still did not pay the Israeli companies for the material that was used in the workshop. How am I going to give them their money? How can I honor my word? They completely destroyed us. We have nothing left.
Relative calm returned to Gaza after the two brotherly factions reached a ceasefire agreement. Meanwhile, Israeli warplanes continue to hover in the sky of the city, a reminder of how the Israeli forces had once tried but miserably failed to destroy the resistance infrastructure in Gaza.
While the occupation forces persist in Judifying Jerusalem and building more settlements, a conference was held in the Holy City to sign a document pledging loyalty to the Aqsa Mosque and to the protection of the holy places in Jerusalem.
للمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية اهتمام خاص حكومة وشعبا بالقدس والمقدسات الإسلامية والمسيحية فيها وخاصة
The government and the people of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and particularly His Majesty King Abdullah II, have always been concerned with Jerusalem and its Islamic and Christian sites, thus providing support for the Jerusalemites at a time when they need it most. Commemorating 40 years since the occupation of Eastern Jerusalem, the Islamic movement in Jerusalem held a conference to pledge loyalty to the protection of honorable Jerusalem and its blessed Aqsa Mosque.
أنا أود أولاً أن أتوجه بكلمة شكر وامتنان إلى الأردن ملكاً وحكومة.
I would like first to express my thanks and gratitude to Jordan, its king, government and people for their ideological stance and for defending the holy sites and the Islamic trust in the city of Jerusalem. This was exemplified recently in the position of the Jordanian government by discrediting the Patriarch Theophilus III.
العائلات والحمائل المقدسية وقعت على هذه الوثيقة التي يعاهدون بها الله بأن يحافظوا.
Jerusalemite families and clans signed this pledge in which they swore to God that they will protect the blessed Aqsa and the Islamic and Christian sites in Jerusalem. This conference, sponsored by the Aqsa Foundation, coincided with Israel celebrating what it calls the unification and annexation of Eastern Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the Israeli government has allocated $1.5 billion to continue its operations of demolition, eviction, Judification and confiscation.
هذا المؤتمر جاء تتويجا لمشروع قد بدأنا به قبل أسابيع.
This conference crowned a project that we started several weeks ago, which aimed at gathering all the Muslim and Christian clans of Jerusalem to sign one document. We have visited all the clans and reached an agreement regarding this document, which they approved with all its clauses.
ممثلو هذه الحمائل بالتوقيع على هذه الوثيقة وعلى كل ما تضمنها من بنود هامة.
The pledge that was signed by the families of Jerusalem is legitimate and is in accordance with our great Islamic religion. Fulfill all covenants, for verily on Judgment Day the pledge will be inquired into.
إذن هي وثيقة عهد ووفاء تتكون من 9 بنود الموقعون عليها.
It is a document pledging loyalty comprised of 9 clauses signed by the sons of the land who pledged their lives, their offspring, and their possessions in a vow to remain faithful to Jerusalem, its land, religions, and sacred sites. Women, men, and seniors, the people of Jerusalem, gathered in this place, brought together by a religious and national sentiment, vowing in front of God that they will protect Jerusalem and its Islamic and Christian sites, and the Aqsa Mosque in particular. They have promised not to give away 1 grain of its soil, but is there anyone who is listening, responding, or participating?
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only.